Well, good morning and welcome to the Real Estate Heavyweights podcast. And this is our Real Estate Heavyweights University, where we've taken a deep dive into everything from flipping over 7 episodes. Tavis, really helped us go into depth on how to pick up a house, how to renovate it. I asked a ton of questions. If you don't know me, I'm actually new to the flipping world. This is flip number 4 that I'm doing right now. I'm closing in January 3rd and getting done with that one. I'm also a real estate agent, but I work full time as a physical therapist assistant, and I just stay really busy. And with me is Tavis Westbrook, a good friend, a mentor, but also just a good old dude. And he's got a lot of friends in the industry, and he's brought someone with him today, Brett Lane. We're going to interview him from Myers Home Buyers. But before we get started with that interview, how you doing, Tavis?
I'm good, man. I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm excited too. That was the third take I had to do to get through that freaking interview, that freaking intro. So I'm going to edit out those first two. My memory is just not good this morning, but we are here. It's December. It's not cold. It still hasn't been cold. I think it got cold for about 3 days. It's a real bummer, but we're about to get into the Christmas season. I know I'm going to be traveling next week, and then Tavis, you're going to be traveling. So we're going to be piecing all this together. But we're super excited to bring you these interviews. We've had some awesome ones, so go back and check those out. But today we have Brett Lane from Myers Home Buyers, a friend of Tavis's. I know Tavis does a lot of business with Myers. And so let's just get right to it. Brett, how are you doing today?
Doing well. Thanks for having me. Obviously, listen to quite a few of the podcasts, and you guys always have good content. So I appreciate the offer to come on and kind of chat with you guys.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I really, really appreciate the time. So why don't you give everyone a background? Obviously, you live here in DFW, but how did you end up at Myers? Tell us about your real estate journey. I know before we started, I know you're working on a flip. So, how did you get to where you are now? And then we'll kind of get into the inner workings at Myers and what you guys do there.
Yeah, definitely. So I've been at Myers since about May of 2018. Basically came from a background of all sports. Did a kinesiology background at Southern Illinois Edwardsville, right outside of St. Louis, for 4 years playing soccer. Went over to Sweden, played professional for a year,
Wow.
and kind of came back and ended up getting a job interview down in Dallas, and met Josh, met the rest of the team, and it speaks to the type of people they are, because they just have an infectious type of personality where you just want to work with them, whatever they're doing. You kind of want to get behind, and that was kind of the situation. Ended up moving down here. Obviously, a scary situation with it being 100% commission, moving to a city I'd never been. But again, I believed in what they were offering, and kind of jumped on, and it kind of took off pretty quickly after that. Obviously started from the bottom as a sales agent. And for people who don't know, Myers Home Buyers is a wholesale company. We offer properties to investors and kind of help them source deals. And I started as a sales agent, so kind of getting people's buy box, asking them what they want. And then we had a line of acquisition agents, putting properties in front of us. Again, that was 2018. So it was a little bit larger margins that we see right now. So pitching a deal for 40, 50 grand profit back then was pretty easy. And the fact that everybody wanted a deal, but I was competing against other people inside the company. And that's honestly something that I really wanted. Having a sports background, you're going in, day out, practicing against your own teammates. Sometimes you're picked for the starting 11, other times you're not. And I always, whenever I'm doing interviews with new people, now that I'm a general manager and doing those interviews, I'm kind of telling them exactly that. You're going to be wanting to win against your teammates, but you're also wanting them to succeed as well, and kind of see that growth. And through my time at Myers, started as an SA, sales agent, and then moved into acquisition agent role, and then obviously into a general manager role, and kind of seeing every aspect of the company and of the business and how it works. So I can't, tell Josh enough thank you for the opportunity, but I've learned enough to where I can do my own flips and have made enough money to be able to do my own flips, and I think that's a huge part of it. It's not only the learnings, but it's actually making the money to be able to do it, and that's something that I forever grateful for.
Cool.
So Brett, talking on that, I think one of the tough things, right, is building up the buyer's list, right? As a seller's agent, or a sales agent, sorry, as an SA is what you guys call it. Building up that buyers list, where'd you start with that? What was some of your, what worked, what didn't work, what was, I mean, and still today, I mean, obviously the market's changed since 2018, and now as a GM, your direct role is to make sure that the people underneath you are building up their, um, their buyers list, right? Building up their network. So what are some of those things that you did in the beginning that worked and didn't work? And how did you keep them engaged? And what were some of those challenges?
Yeah, so obviously what you see kind of the end product, a lot of people when they go to start to, publish stuff on social media and things like that, they're pretty far along in their career. They're not showing you from the very beginnings. And that's something that kind of gives people a false sense of reality and what it is. And, for the first 6 months of my career, I think I sold maybe 4 deals. I was competing against 10 other guys doing the same exact thing with their buyers list within Myers. And it was tough. And obviously you need to come in prepared to be able to, one, not make paychecks and still do the work, but also two, kind of fight through that and still learn things. And that's something that has really helped me. It was not only going to Facebook and talking to people and building relationships. It was genuinely being honest or curious about what they're doing, how they do it. And that's something that I did a lot of. I would reach out to people and they'd say, "Hey, that deal, not interested. I don't think it's a deal. Your ARV's off or whatever. Hey, cool. Can I, do you have any projects going on? Can I come check it out?" And that's something that I probably never thanked you for, Tavis, but you were one of the first ones that kind of said, "Hey, come out to this flip, check out what I'm doing, learn it a little bit." And you're very detailed in what you tell people. And once I started to get kind of a glimpse of that, I started to ask everybody, "Hey, can I come check out your project? Show me what you're doing. How much is it costing you? Give me the breakdown of this and that." And it helped me kind of catapult into being a better sales agent on that side of Myers, but also being able to invest myself. And again, I think that's the biggest thing is have those relationships. It's not always about, can I sell this house today? It's about what can I learn today? And, where's that going to take me further? And, there's plenty of people who, invited me out to those flips and, projects that they were doing and taught me a lot of stuff. And I think that's right when you start, that's the biggest thing. Make those relationships, meet people, the more people the easier it is to get things done in the real estate world. So I would say the biggest thing would be, go for the relationships versus a business. You don't need the first sale. You need that relationship first.
So how long did it take you to close that first deal when you talked about that?
Yeah, so I remember it pretty vividly. It took me 8 weeks to sell the first deal, and it was a first come first serve. So those of you who don't know, most of the properties at Myers are going to be showing based silent offers, and which I didn't really know how to run my numbers very well at that point. I was relying on my investor to tell me, "Hey, I can pay this," and they're never going to hit you with the highest offer or the number that works best for them. And I had to sell one up in Farmersville, and it was a lady's first project, and she was like, "Hey, I really want to go check it out." I drove up there. I remember I got hit by so 635. I was going to 635 to 75, and I can remember it. I was so excited. I was going. All of a sudden, I see this thing floating in the air. And I was like, "What is that?" And it's just floating, swipes down, takes out my mirror on the side, wrecks the car up a little bit. And again, I hadn't made any money, so it's not like I was going to get that fixed. And I rolled up the house just so excited. And luckily it turned out, she was able to buy it. She liked it, and got my first sale, but it took me a good 8 weeks. And from there, I think it took another 4 to 6 weeks for me to win my first showing bidding process.
And prior to that, in that 8 weeks, how many bids did you submit, I guess, or how many, how many clients do you think you secured at that time in 8 weeks? And were you bidding on stuff during that time and just not getting anything? I mean, how many deals did it take you to get one, I guess, is a good question.
We were at that point in time at Myers, we were probably doing 3 showings from Tuesday through Thursday and another 2 on Friday. So we probably had, upwards of 50 to 60 plus showings. that were selling. Like deals didn't terminate back then because the numbers just were so good that somebody was willing to take it down. Again, as more people came in, it just kind of got tighter and tighter. But anyways, it probably took me, I probably submitted over 100 bids before winning one. It's frustrating. I remember a stint in time where we had 12 showings in 3 weeks, and I got second place on 11 of the 12. And obviously, you don't get paid unless you get first. So it was extremely frustrating. I remember going to the general manager at the time and being like, man, what am I doing wrong? And he's like, you just got to keep going. And then I think the next week I sold 6 of 6 showings. So, obviously you got to keep knocking on that door until it opens. And, no matter what the result is, the process never changes. You still got to go through, your calls. You still got to be making the contacts, pitching the deals and things like that. And you can't stop just because you're getting second place. So consistency,
right? Consistency. Yep. So hold on real quick. So on that note, so it takes you about 8 weeks, you come here, you move to Dallas. I mean, what did your reserves look like, and how many times were you willing to throw in the towel and give up? I mean, how many times did you say to yourself, why don't I just go get a salary job or do something else? I mean, obviously you're licensed, you're pursuing this, but, I mean, that's real, right? I mean, 100 opportunities to get one, and consistency in 8 weeks. I mean, this is great information for people out there listening, because this is the raw data, right? This is what this business looks like.
Right. No. Yeah. And obviously, there was times where I was questioning whether I wanted to do it. And it kind of took me back to my sports background. I played 3 sports in high school, and then getting a scholarship to go play in college in soccer. Soccer was not my best sport. I was not the most technical person. Kind of got to college day one and just felt out of place. Ended up basically saying I couldn't even practice. I was so bad at the time. And at that point, I called my parents. I remember having the conversation like, hey, I need to transfer back home. And they were like, no, you're going to stick it out for a year. You're going to give it your best. That's not you. And when I first started at Myers, it was the same thing. I was like, man, I don't know if I can do this. But obviously staying consistent and, putting in the hard work, no matter what, the result is, you're always going to have those questions. And if that's you and you don't have those type of funds to really get past that first, starting period, the rev up period, if you will, it could be tough. I would say you probably need about 3 months of reserves. At the time I was living on an apartment in Irving for like $800 a month. So, I wasn't spending much. I didn't have a car payment. I owned my car outright, so there wasn't a lot of bills that I had. So I was lucky enough to not have a huge burden. But I mean, I think my first 6 months I made 20 grand. And obviously that's 1099. So you got to take out another 30% for taxes. So I was not, doing super well at first. But again, that's just the price you got to pay. I think that's the barrier of entry for somebody who wants to kind of make real estate a career and build that wealth. You got to know that it's not going to come instantly. You might have one deal that does hit instantly, but there's going to be the next 6 weeks, the next 6 months that you don't. And I think that's something that people don't realize either, is the highs and the lows are extremely high and extremely low. And if you can't keep a level head through that all, you're going to have some really, really low moments. So I think that's the biggest thing. You got to roll with the punches.
Yeah,
awesome.
For sure. Yeah, I know Alex Hormozy. I don't know if you're familiar with Alex Hormozy, but he has a saying, something like, you have to do an amount of activity that it would be unreasonable for anyone for you to expect to fail. That you have to find that level where it would just be unreasonable to expect to fail. And I think, and I fall into this too, I think a lot of people just never find that level for themselves, and I think we're seeing that with real estate agents who got into the business over the last, 2 or 3 years ago, when the market was super hot. It was really easy to make money. You find a listing, you put it out, it's going to sell. My very first flip, I didn't do anything to it, and I made really good money because the market just absorbed it. It was great, but it didn't really teach me anything. And now I'm getting into the work part of it and trying to figure out what volume you either have to put in the volume of work, of door knocking, calling, or volume, like Mark, he's putting out a lot of money into mailers and that sort of thing. Like there's actual volume of effort that you have to put forward, and you have to do it consistently enough to get that feedback. And so, yeah, I think, so many people, they hear that, but it's so hard to put into practice. And I think that's where your athletic background comes in. I'm sure you see there's certain people who have a specific amount of natural talent, but at some point that almost fails them because they rely on that so much. But then at some point you find someone who has a decent amount of natural talent and a huge work ethic, and they can far surpass them. So how did some of those lessons with, putting the work in with, we've never had, the two people that we've had on so far were not professional athletes. And I don't know that we'll have another professional athlete on anytime real soon. So I don't want to skip over the fact that you went to Sweden and got paid to play soccer. And I'm sure it's not, I don't know that you had a Neymar contract, but, I'm sure there is a certain aspect of being a professional and putting the work in that, I kind of want to hear a little bit about that, because I don't know that I'll get to talk to anyone else.
Well, and I'm curious too what your other sports were, because you said you got a scholarship for soccer, but you'd never played soccer before. Well, soccer wasn't your best sport. I don't know if you never played before, but it wasn't one you were most confident in.
Yeah, and I got a few things that I'll kind of touch on there. So in high school, I played basketball, baseball, and soccer. And then in the summer, I was playing all three. I could never choose which one, because I was just a competitor. I just wanted to go out there. If somebody said they were playing one of those sports, I was there. I wanted to compete. And obviously, I enjoyed every single one of them. I would say naturally, I was probably best at basketball. But, thank God I'm sitting. I'm only 5'8", and, I couldn't do everything that you needed to be able to do to obviously play at a high level of basketball. So when I got a scholarship to play soccer, I jumped on it. And I'll be honest, I was getting the scholarship because of my athleticism, my potential. I had a pretty high ceiling since I'd never consistently played for, longer than about 3 months at a time. And with soccer, you kind of lose a lot of that skill. So once I kind of hit, that first year, freshman year of college, and they redshirted me, I just got straight in the gym and, was just working on, my soccer specific skills, and was able to start the next 4 years. And, obviously that took me into Sweden, and yeah, I did not have a Neymar contract. I was playing in pretty low level. I don't want to, misconstrue that. I wasn't playing super high level, but, it was professional soccer, and, over there they have promotion and relegation. So you're fighting for something. You're fighting to get into the higher league so you can get paid more. And that was something that was huge. But, Ashton, you touched on something where you're saying, the volume of work that you put in. I think a lot of people lose sight of not only the volume of work, but the intention behind that work. And that's something that I learned, through sports. It's like, I can't just go out and shoot 100 shots or pass, 100 balls. Like, I had to make it very intentional with what I was trying to improve on and what my goal was, so that work that I was putting in was actually going towards something versus just saying I was doing the activity. And a lot of people do fall into that trap of, well, I made 100 calls today, I guess the day's done. But were you making those calls with the intention behind it? And, were you being intentional with your behavior, with your words, with your actions, to where it actually meant something when you were doing that activity? And that's something that sports kind of has helped me with in my professional life, is being intentional with the action and the activity that you do. We only have 24 hours in the day. So, if you're not spending that time with an intention behind it, then you're kind of wasting it. So,
yeah. Well,
That's
to that
huge.
end, so,
Yeah.
Myers Home Buyers is a huge company. They have a lot of resources behind them, and there's a ton of benefits to that. So a lot of people, when they're starting out, what's ironic is you have that level of company, but then a lot of people, when you're listening to podcasts and reading books, they'll say, hey, the easiest way to get into real estate is wholesaling, because it's a low barrier to entry. Basically, you go kick the bushes, find a house that needs to be sold, go find someone who's willing to buy it. You can pad it a little bit and do the deal. So where do you think, what's one of the bigger disconnects? Like, when people come into it, what's the hugest, like, hockey stick learning curve that you can kind of help teach a few things for people who are getting into wholesaling to say, look, I know you think it's going to go this way, but here's the things you got to really put your mind towards. Is it really finding, scouring, connecting with buyers? Is it learning how to comp houses? Is, like, what are the actual skills that someone needs to get into the wholesaling business and actually succeed?
Yeah, I think one would be comping, but the biggest thing for me, and something that probably hindered my ability to ramp up quickly, was the transparency. Obviously, at Myers, we tried to be honest and transparent and accurate with our ARVs and things like that. Um, and sometimes I was being very transparent. And what I thought, you know, was the right thing to do, still in my mind is the right thing to do, but it did not get me paid right away. But it's something that has gotten me to a point where I have people who will come to me to just ask for my opinion at this point. And I think that's the biggest thing that I can tell people is you're not trying to sell one deal for 100 grand. That's never going to make or break. And obviously 100 grand, yes, that's a lot of money, but in the long run, if you're making a career out of real estate, if you're getting $10,000-$15,000 wholesale fees to somebody who is going to make money and come back and be a resource for you, that weighs a lot heavier than that one rip. And again, if somebody put 100 grand in front of me right now and I was super excited, yes, I would love to take it, but not at the expense of a relationship, not at the expense of somebody else losing money. And I think that's the biggest thing that I take away from wholesale is there's just a lot of people in it for the wrong reasons. And it's, I think we need to call wholesale what it is. It's sourcing properties for investors. If we're not going to do the work, the investor still needs to make money who buys it from us. And that's the biggest thing that I can kind of talk about.
So talk about, just expand a little bit on transparency. So and when you say that, I think I understand what you're talking about, but for those out there who may not quite understand how the transactions work, talk about how y'all do it, how you're transparent, the benefits of it, and then compare it to how some other wholesalers or wholesaling companies might do it to where, so if I'm an investor, hey, what do I need to be looking out for? What questions can I ask to sort of garner that transparency from a company?
Yeah, I think I would never have somebody buy something sight unseen unless they have somebody that they can trust that has walked it, or the numbers are just that good. And when I say the numbers are just that good, that means you did your own due diligence and you're not going off of what somebody else says. There's a lot of ways that you can misconstrue the numbers, and whether that be through the rehab budget, whether that be through the ARV, whether that be hiding closing costs, things like that. Those are things that you need to be looking out for, and you do need to work with a company that obviously does this and does it the right way. But I would definitely say you need to run your own numbers to make sure that you're never making a mistake. And I would always say walk the properties. But with transparency in the wholesale industry, it's trying to be as accurate with that ARV as possible. I try and say, okay, what's the lowest that I see this selling for? And obviously I'm going to put it out at a certain number. That doesn't mean that's probably going to be most wholesalers, and including Myers. Like we can be off as well. We're going to put it out to where the numbers look good. So I think you always need to have two numbers in mind. One number of, hey, this is a great ARV. I don't know. The MacBook has like some different things, different animations.
That was a great point. But I mean, you fired off some balloons there. That looked pretty awesome.
So you always need to have two numbers.
Balloons.
Yeah. One number of like that number that you think, hey, this could sell for this, but you also need to have that backup number of like, hey, worst case scenario, it sells for this. And I think you need to work off that worst case number. Especially with the market right now, you just never know where it's going to go. And if you're in, a price point that isn't the best right now with interest rates, you might be shooting for that lower number. So always having, different numbers and getting different opinions, running your own numbers, and always walking the properties. I know me and Tavis had people send in sight unseen offers. Look, those pictures look great, but it doesn't tell the whole story. And that's the biggest thing. And again, especially if you're a first time or, first five flips, and you don't know what's behind those walls, unless you can really trust that person you're buying from, always walk the property.
Yeah. Well, and Brett, you've done that with me. I mean, I've seen some deals go out, and of course I tag you with it, right? I get your emails and everything, and so I hit you up, and was like, hey, what's up with this deal? And you're like, have you walked it? And I'm like, well, not yet. You're like, go walk it. And I'm like, okay. But I mean, you've done that, and obviously I've done this a few times, right? So, I mean, I do know my numbers, and I do pad it, and I know what the unknowns are going to be, right? Just because I've been around the block a few times. But No, I mean, I mean, great information out there. In what you're talking about. I'll say, I think, you hit the nail on the head talking about, um, if it's going to take you 100 deals to get one closing, right, in the wholesale industry, and you're giving that up on not being transparent or bidding off of the unknown, the inexperienced buyer that's going to do one deal and they're going to get egg on their face because they're upside down on the deal, or the deal didn't work out for them the way that it was projected to do. They're not going to come back to you, right? And so now you just put out that effort, 100 deals to one, to get one buyer that's going to, you got that one closing, like you said, you make 10 grand on it, versus, having that buyer come back to you, and if you get enough of those people, I mean, to be honest, that was my original mindset in 2009 when I transitioned into the investment side full time from the broker side, was like, how many investors does it take me to get to do two sides of the transaction and just repeat deals with these guys, right? Just source REO property. And that was like my target, right? So I need to find cash investors. I need to source the REO property. I know how to make the numbers work. I know what to do to make it look pretty. Let me just facilitate it. And at first it just started off as just the broker side. It was like, get 3% on the front end, get 3% on the back end. That's a win-win, right? And I'll do this over and over with, again, if I have 5 to 10 investors that I'm doing this, a couple times a month for. And then it turned in, for me, it turned in more of, the facilitating role, right? And then basically becoming the GC in the deal. And so then it was like, okay, now I'm brokering it. Now I'm GCing it. Now I'm kind of turnkeying it, right? And that was kind of how it transitioned for me. But I think it's exactly what you're saying, right? It's like you've got to look at that relationship and the value of the relationship and really pay attention to that. And I mean, I've seen Myers grow from the very beginning to what it is today. And I've seen some changeover, and I've seen some guys like you that have been there for a long time that have come up, and I've seen other guys that did a really good job at Myers, and now they've graduated onto their own entity and they're doing great, in that world. So I mean, it's evolution, right? It's going to change. It's going to, people are going to get on to, bigger and better things that make sense for their business. But I think you guys have a great outfit. And so if you guys are listening out there and you guys are looking for a trustworthy wholesaler, I mean, Myers is definitely one that I would recommend, right? And not only that, your founder and a great team behind them have developed this phenomenal app called Trelly, and I'll let you talk on that just a tad bit, because I think that has been a disruptor in this market, and I think it's awesome. I love the tool, but more so than that, my engagement with you guys, and it's funny because I think somehow you got assigned to me originally. I think in 2018, I think you got assigned to me, and I think it started off where you were like, "Oh yeah, this is great," and I'll let you talk on that a little bit, but for me, and my engagement with Myers has been more of a JV relationship, to where I'm actually sourcing. Well, I've got the deal, and then I'm pushing it to you guys to find the buyer, right? And we've worked together really well in that, and we've closed hundreds of transactions over the years. And a lot of times for me, it's given me an outlet for when the deal doesn't necessarily fit location for me, time wise. Maybe my money's tied up. Maybe it's just an outlier, or maybe the seller wants more money. And so I go this way as an option, right? Because for it to make sense for me as a flip and what I want in it doesn't make sense. So we can make it work. Somebody else will take a little bit less on the deal than what I want to make. I always use the analogy, like if it's a deal that I want to make 50 grand on, there's somebody else that might be willing to make it work for 30 grand, but for me, time, effort, and money, it's like, I need to make 50, and somebody else is completely fine with that 30. Right. So, sometimes that's the difference. And I will say, working with Myers has really opened my mind up, to that there's all different investors out there, and what makes sense for somebody else. I mean, there's all different strategies, right? And that really opened my mind, because I used to kind of just have this very closed in mindset of like, no, it doesn't work for me. And I mean, I don't know how many deals back in the day when I had Superior, how many deals went wayside. We lost so many deals because like, oh, it doesn't fit the box. Sorry, go ahead and sell it traditionally or whatever. And we just let the deal go wayside. We didn't find a solution, right? So that's been a great thing for me. But anyways, I'll let you answer some of those points.
Yeah, I think there's a hat for every head, and if the numbers make sense, there's an investor for every deal. So with that being said, as an investor and somebody who's like flipping like you and like Josh was back in 2015, if the deal doesn't make sense, or if you don't have the capital at that point because you have so many other projects going on, it still makes sense for another investor, and it makes sense for you to make money off those leads. Because obviously you want to make money off of every lead that comes in, if you can, and whether it be $5,000, whether it be $15,000, whether it be $50,000 on a wholesale fee, the deal's got to make sense for somebody, and the market's going to tell you where it's going to land. But that's kind of why we invented Trelly. So Trelly is a two-sided marketplace where wholesalers or investors or real estate agents can list investment properties on the app. It's got a similar interface to like a Zillow, where you'd see a property for sale pop up. Gives you full details on it. It has it should have a lot of pictures if they're doing the posting right. But and that kind of brings me back to the point that I was talking to Ashton about, which is run your own numbers. These are all numbers input by a person trying to sell the deal. Just like an investor would try and list the price or list the property for the most money. The wholesaler is trying to do the same thing. And obviously you got to run your own numbers, but the marketplace has kind of changed the game for a lot of wholesalers. It gives somebody, for a newer wholesaler, it gives them the opportunity to post it and have, reach, 10,000 investors in the DFW area, 15,000 investors. A lot of people will use Myers as a supplemental, disposition service, kind of like Tavis, where, we'll help them sell the deal, and 50-50, the JV, the wholesale fee. And that's something that obviously, based on, how much effort you want to put in for selling it, how much you want to deal with talking to the investors, hosting the showing, that would decipher which direction you go, whether you just list on Trelly or if you come directly to a Myers agent. But that's huge. And obviously I'll kind of go back to, I actually remember where I was sitting when I made that call to Tavis the first time. I was like, this guy's got a couple profiles in our CRM. I was like, I might want to call him. He's got some deals associated to him. I was like, I don't know how I landed, you in my database, but I remember calling you and I get off the phone and I was writing down notes and I looked at the guy next to me. I'm still really good friends with him. He lives in Colorado. And I was like, man, I think I just landed my biggest buyer. And I remember saying your name out loud. And I remember one of the other guys like, no, I work with him. I was like, well, I'm meeting him on Tuesday. So I think he's going to work with me now. And it's funny, obviously meeting you and learning so much from you is a blessing in disguise. I didn't realize how much I was going to learn from you and how much, my business was going to grow, personally and professionally, through you. So again, that's, a hat tip to you, for all the service you do. I know you teach a lot of, younger investors and agents how to do this business right. And it's something that has, helped me, a ton. So I appreciate that.
That's awesome. Yeah. Thank you.
I've been on that end too, Brett. He's, our relationship, I've actually known of Tavis for probably 13 years. I had a friend in college who had done some business with him here. And I went to school out in California, but he did some business with him here. And so I'd followed him a long time. And, I reached out to him a couple years ago and I tried a couple of times and he ignored me. He just ghosted me. He's just too big, just too busy. But the lesson, well, this is a lesson to this, so the first couple of times it was a real soft, like, hey, I don't even remember what I said, but it was just like, really, I didn't offer anything. It was just, hey, I'd love to learn about real estate. And so then actually the third time I had a flip, I knew I was out of money. I really couldn't buy anything else. And so I reached out and I said, hey, I don't have any funds to buy anything else, but I would be willing to help you out. However, I can walk properties for you. I can go, do some tasks for you. I didn't even really know what I was asking, but I just said, I'll do anything you want me to do. I'm working a flip right now and I can't buy another one. So I'll go bird dog or whatever. And he got back to me right away. And so, I think there's a lot of people out there who want to learn the business, and you see someone online, or you see, a friend that's doing something, and I would imagine, like, I don't get hit up a ton, but I'm sure through the years, Tavis has gotten hit up for people wanting help. And, most of the time people who are doing it are willing to help, but you also have to come to the table with something, some sort of either proof that you're really putting your money where your mouth is, or you're putting an effort forward. And like, y'all have a mutual relationship there, and you can help him out doing some things. So to me, that's a little nugget there, is if you're looking for help, it's out there, but don't just always like, hey, can we go to coffee and you teach me what I've read in 15 books and seen in 94 YouTube videos already. It's like, you got to take a little bit of action to sort of prove that you're in the game a little bit. So, so Brett, can you just describe a little bit for people who've never used a wholesaler before? I actually bought a deal from a wholesaling company for my third flip. And then I guess technically bought one from a wholesaler, because I bought my last flip from Tavis that he pretty much wholesaled from me. So I've gone through that process a couple of times. One of the things that was surprising to me about the process early on, and it almost feels a little sketchy until you realize that this is just how it goes. The timelines are really fast, and so I think some of those wholesaling companies will say, you sight unseen, and we need this EMD, this deposit, non-refundable, and it's really, really fast. So can you just kind of talk through, if someone's investing and looking, they get inundated on Facebook and everything from all these wholesalers, like just what should the process look like, and kind of the steps that you can walk through and get to your deal with your first deal with a wholesaler?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, there is some negative connotation with the word wholesaler, just because of, things that I've said. There's people that are dishonest that have done it in the past. You want to find somebody that, one, you can trust, but also know that, wholesaling is not a dirty game. Obviously at Myers, we pay a lot of money to source these deals and market to, sellers that are in some sort of, distress. The house is distressed. And I think that money that we pay, we do have to recoup, and for people who, might have a full-time job, that don't have time or money to market to, sellers, or, go look at properties on the MLS all the time with agents, because it's very tough to find an investment property on the MLS. From my experience, it's okay to buy from wholesalers. But I will say you need to be fully prepared with every aspect of what you're going to do. So how you're going to fund it, who you're going to use for, your contracting, who's going to list it on the back end, and having those teams in place will help you so much more than anything else. And having an agent that can help you with comps, a lot of agents will do that. They'll run the comps for you prior to you putting an offer in, because they want the listing. When you're done, it's a lot easier to sell a fully flipped vacant house than it is to sell a house from a homeowner that maybe has a few updates. So the agent is willing to do that work if you find the right one. I think, again, you should probably look for an agent that is full-time and maybe in this industry, like a Tavis, who I know Tavis probably doesn't do a bunch of, listings for other clients, but somebody like that who has the experience, who knows, how to sell something like that would be huge. So, obviously you need to have everything in place before you start putting offers in on wholesale deals. Cause like you said, they move very quick. Not only do they close quick, they also have a process of like winning it. Like when we do our showings, our 1 hour walkthroughs, you have to come there, put your rehab bids together, and make an offer all within about an hour. And sometimes that's not something that a lot of people can do. And that's totally fine. I think you need to be honest with the person you're working with. If you need a little bit more time, whether their process permits it. I know a lot of times if we can, we will try and allow somebody a little bit extra time. Because the last thing we want is somebody putting in an offer, dragging their feet. They didn't have anything ready to go, whether it be deposit, whether it be a hard money lender, all those different things that they need to have ready, and then backing out. That puts us in a much tougher position than it would be if you would have just said, hey, I need a little bit more time, or hey, I can't offer on this. And a lot of guys that come to me have told me that. I try and find them a vacant property to where, hey, you can actually go walk this prior to the showing. I'll meet you out there, and you walk it, you put your numbers together. Yes, we still have to go through the whole bidding process, but at least you have time to run your numbers, because again, it's not going to be for everybody. And that's totally fine. I think some people might be a little too prideful to admit it. But for me, somebody who doesn't have the crews, and I would need a GC to walk it. For me to walk it and go say, hey, it's going to cost this, would be pretty unwise. And I actually did that with my flip in North Richmond Hills that I just bought. I bought it, closed on it, went out there with a contractor, and he goes, all right, so how much are you looking to spend? And I said, 45. And he was like, are you sure? Is that just for the interior? Because you got roof, foundation, HVAC, and plumbing. And that right there is 45. And it ended up, he quoted me, 85. And I was like, okay, well, I might be doing this one for free. And that's something that, obviously, I've only done, 4 flips as well. So it's something that, it's going to be a tough pill to swallow at the end, but it's something, these are learning experiences. And, now I know, especially after doing it recently, that, I'll press on people, hey, do you have everything in place? Are you ready to go if you make this offer?
Yeah. Well, and I think one of the things that I've always bragged about you guys on, obviously I get a lot of different emails from other wholesalers, just being in the industry. I'm sure you guys do too, but one of the things that you guys did, and I don't even know if it originally started this way, and Josh and the legal team changed the way that you guys do it, but one of the things that I like is that, first off, the ARV, the comps that support the value. In fact, when we tag time deals,
tag team deals.
Geez, I can't speak.
I'm rubbing off on you guys. Brett's throwing off balloons onto the video, and
when we tag team deals, your comps are typically a little tighter than mine, right? And I've been doing this a long time, and I think Ashton, I've talked about this before. When you sell a property, you got to sell it 4 ways. You got to sell it to 4 people. You got to sell it to the buyer. You got to sell it to the inspector. Well, first off, you got to sell it to the agent representing the buyer. So you got the agent, the buyer, the inspector, and then you have the appraiser, right? And so knowing those facts is the way that you got to kind of think a little bigger, but also still be within guidelines, right? When we comp things. So, you and I are usually really close to each other on our comps, but sometimes your comps are a little tighter because you're staying subdivision only, or, you're not crossing over a road, but I'll cross over a road if it's like build, age, and style, right? And things like that. But nevertheless, one of the things I love about the way you guys set it up is, one, ARV is very achievable. What the value is on the backside is great. And it's funny, I've heard from other people before, they're like, oh, I don't really use that. I'm like, what do you mean? You got to start there and work backwards, right? It was so bizarre when I heard that from this person. I was like, what are you talking about, man? But anyways, you start with that and work backwards. But one of the things that you guys don't do, which I appreciate, is you don't try to put together a rehab number. You don't put that in. And a lot of other wholesalers will. They'll say, oh, here's ARV, it's 40,000 and work and this and that, right? You guys leave that
cosmetic only,
gap.
15 grand. That's like
exactly.
They just copy and paste that from about the last 15 emails. Cosmetic only, like cosmetic, 15 grand. Like,
Myers does a really good job of leaving the gap, right? You leave the spread. It's $100,000 spread, might be $150,000 spread. You kind of point out the big ticket items, hey, it, needs a roof, AC's old, might need an AC, things like that, right? Foundation needs work or needs an expert opinion. Again, you guys are supplying a deal. You guys are taking out all of the upfront legwork that we talked about, the massive amount of phone calls, the massive amount of money that like Mark Fowler's spending every month in mailers, to get an opportunity, right? I mean, first off, we talk about that, like the amount of effort you do to just make an appointment. Then you get the appointment. I mean, Ashton and I were talking about this off air a little bit. You get the appointment, but then this person may or may not be ready to sell now, right? They may be 6 months, they may be a year, they may be 2 years out. But you're so excited when you get that mailer and you get the phone to ring, and then you make the appointment. You're like, all right, I got a deal. And then they're like, we're 6 months out, or they're completely unrealistic on their options, right? And so that's the nice thing about wholesaling or about buying from a wholesaler is that seller is in contract with you guys. The deal's ready to go. If your numbers work, it's a deal. Like, there's no question about it. Like, if the numbers make sense for you and the location and you've got everything ready to go and you got your team, it's a deal. You giddy up, boy. It's time to go. So that's what's amazing about it, right? And some people get sideways on the whole, on the yield that you guys make in between what you bought it for and what you're selling it for, and that doesn't matter. At the end of the day, again, it's part of the deal, right? And if the numbers make sense, then pull the trigger. It doesn't matter, man. Everybody's in this business to make something, and you guys have already put together the legwork. Nobody sees what you've done to even get that opportunity. So, it's frustrating to me when I hear that pushback, or when I've wholesale deals and I have somebody kind of pushing back on, what that yield might look like to me, and I'm like, it doesn't matter. It either the deal works for you or not, and that's it. So
yeah, no one walks
anyways,
through the mall. No one walks through the mall complaining about how much Nike's making on each shoe, and you have zero idea what goes into the actual development and all that. But you just buy it, But for some reason, in real estate, it's like, especially if you're doing an assignment, you can see both sides. If you do a double close, you can't see what the first person's making, and that's one reason to do a double close. But if you're doing an assignment, you can typically see what the first person's going to make, and so. People get all caught up on that. So, well, Brett, kind of as we're wrapping up, is there anything else that you wanted to say about what Myers and Trelli offer? Like, I wanted you to get an opportunity to talk about that, or we kind of covered everything. If anybody wanted to work with you guys, like, what's the best way to get in touch with you guys and kind of start a relationship there?
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, Myers is open to working with all investors, all wholesalers, if there's sellers that are even watching or, listening to this, watching this, that want to sell, we offer convenience. I always tell the sellers that I meet with, I'm never going to be the highest offer, but I'm going to be the most transparent person. And I'm going to give you a number that I can stand behind and that I'm willing to close on, rather than hit them with a high number and coming down. So, I'll say this to the rest of the real estate world, it's much more fun to do business with people who are nice versus people who are being a-holes. So obviously I would hope that more people, as as times get tougher and as the market tightens as it already has, think about the other person on the end of the side. We're all trying to do business the right way. So I stress that hopefully people can put yourself in somebody else's shoes, and make sure that you're doing something and treating people the way you'd want to be treated. And that's something that I've always kind of stood behind. I never want to get that call about somebody telling me that I ripped them off on some things. And, luckily enough, I've never gotten that call. But obviously that you can't always control it, but if you're doing business the right way and being transparent, you avoid those situations. So if somebody does want to reach out to me and work with me, it's Brett@MyersHomebuyers.com. And that's BRETT at Myers, MYERS, homebuyers.com. And they can reach out to me via email and I'll set up a call.
Awesome. Yeah, you guys get with Brett. I know he's started a meetup event here recently, and I think that's going good. So if you guys want more information on that, please reach out to Brett.
And that's going to be January 11th is the next one from 5 to 7. So that's good. Awesome. At Sidecar Social. So
nice. We'll put something out. Yeah, we'll put something out on our stuff too. So, well, before we sign off, I know you said you just picked up your fourth flip, North Richland Hills. Have you started rehab? What's your timeline on that? And kind of what's your kind of big goal? Are you wanting to get into flipping more and more, or you just kind of like to keep something going, a little bit here and there? Like, what's your overall real estate goal there?
Yeah, so I think I definitely want to get some rentals. And I think, to be honest, like as a wholesaler, I think you should always be doing a flip every few months, just because, and I learned this a lot. I took quite a big break because it's easier to sell the deal to another investor and take on that work versus do it. And my numbers have been off. I hadn't done a flip since basically last summer in like June. And the costs have gone up and they've changed. And if I'm telling people these costs, I better be accurate. So this has kind of opened my eyes. On this one in North Richland Hills, we did start work on Monday, put in 41 piers, PVC plumbing snapped. So that's fun. It's going to be a big project. I'm adding a shower where a closet was in the master because there's a 3 1.5, something I've never done. and something that I pitch a lot because that's a good way to add value. So I'm glad I'm actually getting to see what goes into that. And that's why I think, you should be doing, work with a wholesaler who does their own flips because they know a lot more and they're going to be able to tell you a lot more. So practice what you preach, if you will. But yeah, I hope I will say I failed on my goal. I remember I posted this in January that I was going to have, I think I said 2 rentals and 2 flips. And Tavis actually said, "What can I do to help you?" I remember that. He was the first one to comment, and I failed on that. So I will call myself out. I like to point that out. Because if you can't keep yourself accountable, everybody else needs to. So I failed there, but hopefully next year I can kind of grow that. I won't make any excuses, but the interest rates did not help.
Well, you failed forward. I mean, you picked up a flip. You didn't just sit there.
Yep.
When you set your goals high enough and you work towards them, you still do awesome things. I mean, so many people just never get off the couch and never put the book down and all that stuff. So, man, that's awesome.
Don't be afraid to fail, right? I mean, and I think that's the lesson to be learned here is, you've got to take action and you can't be afraid to fail. I mean, if you fail, that's all right. What did you learn? And I think Ashton's talked about that, with his stuff and his experiences, and he keeps going. What he hasn't really said in this, and Brett, you and I have had this conversation, and anybody that's listened to our podcast, I've defined what a tier 2 is in the past, but he's taken on the last 2 projects he's taken on were tier 2s, so they were not easy deals that are for the beginner guy. He's taken on these big projects, and he's learned a lot. There was a lot of things to learn. I think the biggest issues were timelines, but he also learned a lot regarding the GC and spending extra money on doing things twice, unfortunately. So
hire decent people on the front end, and you won't have to worry about it. But it takes a while to get your right team, and it all just takes time. It's reading books and watching YouTube videos and seeing Instagram and people succeeding. You think it happened overnight or whatever, and people profit by making it sound just super easy, because if they made it sound really, really complicated, not many people would buy the book, And so, but until you get in and you do it, and you guys there, Myers have done thousands of transactions, I'm sure, at this point. Between Josh's brokerage earlier and this, I've seen a lot of real estate come and go. So I love hearing y'all's story and knowing the background and kind of the heart behind the emails that I get. And I know if anyone that works with Tavis and over and over and over, of course has a huge credibility with me. So, well, man, Brett, it's been awesome. I really, really appreciate the time. And you might be the first and last pro athlete. I don't discount Sweden, okay? Because just ride that for a while. Just refer to I was a pro soccer player for a while. So that's
I'm
really,
just
really
surprised
cool.
You didn't come back married, man.
Well, I went over there with a girlfriend, so that's the hard part. So I will say that if you ever go to a different country.
Don't take a girlfriend.
Yeah.
If you're going to be a pro soccer player, next time I have an opportunity to be a pro soccer player in another country, I'll keep that in mind. So, well, man, Brett, thank you so much. For you guys that are listening, just keep on listening through the holidays. We're going to do everything we can to bring you some content during the holidays. But like I said, I'm out of town. Tavis is going to be on an awesome trip that I'm sure we'll talk about at some point. But just stay in tune. We're going to try to get this out on YouTube. We're on Instagram, Facebook. You can find me at the Dallas Real Estate Guy on Instagram. You can find Tavis, Facebook, Instagram, Tavis Westbrook Designs. That's Travis without the R. And we're still working on the website. We're getting there. But we're trying to fine tune everything for you. But if you enjoyed this episode, please like it. Share it with a friend. That's the biggest thing. Just post it somewhere, text it to a buddy. Say, man, these guys have got a lot of really great information. And that would really mean the world to us. So just going to kind of keep bringing it to you, keep trying to grow. So until then, you guys have a great day, and we'll talk to you next time.